take a look at setting up pfSense in a virtual machine in VirtualBox. First thing that we need to do is to obtain the ISO for the installer for pfSense. If you're here at CTP or on CTP's network, you can copy it from student NAS. Otherwise, you can download it from their website. Once you have it, we're going to set up a virtual machine in which to install pfSense. And it's simple. It's like setting up any other virtual machine. The thing that people tend to forget is to enable a second network interface. Since it's a router, it needs both a LAN and a WAN side, or an inside or an outside, depending on how you want to look at it. But it needs to have two network interfaces, since its purpose is to join two different networks together. After we have it installed and set up, we're going to then configure it from the console. And then once that's ready, we're going to access it from its web interface, the admin interface. All right, so let's take a look and see what this looks like. Head over to VirtualBox. I'm going to create a new virtual machine. And I'm just going to give it a name. It's Linux, and it's 64-bit Linux. We have an other down here, which will work just fine. For memory, this will run on 512 megabytes of RAM. You can give it a little bit more if you have it available. If you're working from one of our labs, then use whatever specifications the lab gives you. We need to create a virtual disk where this virtual machine will use as storage. Defaults are fine. And it really requires very little disk storage, 8 gigabytes or whatever the lab specifies. And don't start it yet. We have to do one more step, which is to then add that second network adapter. In VirtualBox, you just can come in here and click Enable Adapter under Adapter 2. Now, the network 2 will be on our internal network, the LAN side. And adapter 1, depending on what exactly you're trying to accomplish, by default, behind NAT is probably your best bet. But you may need it to be on the same network as whatever the rest of the WAN is. So that's really your decision, but if you don't know, NAT's probably the right answer for you. And we'll also later on be able to use the MAC addresses of these network adapters to identify within pfSense which adapter is which. So if we take a look at adapter 2, it ends in 3.3. Adapter 1 is C4. So if we can just remember that C4 is on the WAN side connected to NAT, adapter 1, that's probably about as much as you'll need to know. You can always come back to settings and double check this if you don't remember. I'll try to remember though, C4 on adapter 1. That's my WAN port. Okay. Now I can go and specify the bootable ISO here if I want. If you don't do this, first time you run the virtual machine, VirtualBox will ask you if you want to select one, but you can do it manually here also. And I've already copied it to my local machine here. Okay, so pfSense is there, we're all good. We got our network adapter set up, and we're ready to start. Okay, well, I guess that didn't work. We'll try again. Installation is fairly quick. These messages are letting you just know how the virtual machine is handling keyboard and mouse input. Virtual machines sometimes will try to capture the keyboard or mouse. So once you've clicked inside of the VirtualBox window, you won't be able to break out of it to access the rest of your Windows interface. So these status messages just tell you what's going on. If your keyboard and mouse do get locked inside of the window, you can press the Control key on the right side of the keyboard to release it. Let's increase the size of our window here a little bit, make it easier to see. Okay, there we go. We want to install, just hitting the Enter key. Key map. So we're just using a standard US keyboard. I'm going to leave it as default. And we're going to do the guided disk setup. Let it decide for us what's best. All right, it's now finished. Before exiting the installer, would you like to open a shell? I definitely don't want to do that. I have no idea what I'd do there. And would I like to reboot? And so let's see, it may restart to the ISO again. Let's just see what happens. Okay, and it's actually restarted the installer, and that's because we left the ISO in the virtual optical drive. So let's fix that. Okay, remove that disk. Could have also come in here and changed the boot order, but we just removed the optical disk. We won't be using it again. And go ahead and start it. All right, and so here we are at the main menu. It's telling us right up top that it's already selected a LAN and WAN. First, the WAN gave it an address, which it received through DHCP. If you work with VirtualBox for a little while and you have a network adapter on NAT, then that address will look familiar to you, 10.0.2.15, insider notation /24, same as netmask 255, 255, 255, 0. And LAN, it picked and assigned it 192.168.1.1/24. So we don't know which interface is which, so we could either just try using it to see if it picked correctly, or we can try reconfiguring it and selecting it ourselves. So let's try option number 1 here and see what we get. All right, so it's showing us EM0 and its MAC address, and EM1 in its MAC. And those are the MAC addresses that we saw in the VirtualBox settings. Remember, C4 is the WAN address that I wanted to use. And so do we want VLANs? No, we do not want VLANs. VLAN's a virtual LAN, allows you to segment a network. Okay, the WAN interface. So here we get to select, and we saw in that list up above, the one with the correct MAC address is that one that ends in C4, so that's EM0. Okay, type that in. All right, enter the LAN network interface, and here we have EM1. Okay, so that's the correct assignment based on the MAC address. We're happy, we'll say yes. It's just a good thing to do to double check that that is configured correctly. We don't know 100% for sure if it would guess correctly after it just installed itself. So checking that and verifying is a good thing to do. Great. So if you're happy with that IP address for your local area network, where the gateway would be 192.168.1.1, you can stick with it. If you want to change that, then you could reconfigure it here in the console. We can do that with option number 2. I'm happy with these IP addresses. I'm going to leave them as they are. So one thing I do want to do is to set a web configuration password, and so that's so that we can access the admin panel from another device on the local area network. Okay. Okay, so it's reset to the default. Default admin is, username is admin, default password is pfSense. Okay, so we just installed it, so it should have been correct, but just in case it wasn't, now we're all set. That's pretty much all you need to do to set up the basics of pfSense. Now I'm going to start up a virtual machine and make sure it's on the same network as the LAN side of this router. We'll try connecting to it from a web browser. Increase the screen here a bit. All right, so we'll open up Chrome. And actually, before I go there, let me just do a basic check. I didn't even verify if we are on the correct network. All right, and so I just ran ipconfig at my command prompt, and look at here, 10.0.2.15. So again, if you're used to using VirtualBox, you'll know that this is the IP address that is assigned by VirtualBox's NAT system. So this is not on the correct network. So I'm just going to go ahead and shut it down. And let's correct the configuration of the network. And in this case, we want internal network. You can define more than one internal network if you're working with multiple virtual networks, but we use the same internal network with the same name as the LAN side of our pfSense router. We can just double check that. Remember, this is the Windows virtual machine. Take a look at the settings for the network. Here it is. LAN side's on the internal network, INTnet. Okay, so that looks good. Let's start it up. Oh, okay. And now look at that, 192.168.1.100. All right, that's the same network as the LAN side of my pfSense router, so that's looking much better. Now we can go take a look at the web configuration. All right, self-signed certificate, this is okay. And we reset the password for this, so it's admin and pfSense. I hope it is. There we go. All right, and so now this is the wizard for setting up pfSense. I'm not going to do this right now, but up here in status, one thing that is common that you want to look up are DHCP leases. So you could come here to status and then DHCP leases. This will show you any IP addresses that your pfSense router has given out on your local area network. And you can see this address that actually we're working from right now, where this web browser is, 192.168.1.100. All right, those are the same because this is the device configuration panel, the device that assigned this IP address to this particular computer. And it's you can see the gateway here, 192.168.1.1. If we just do an all here, we're going to see that in fact, for this Ethernet adapter, the DHCP server is the same as the gateway, 192.168.1.1. And that all makes sense to us because we're looking at over here in the panel, we're looking at it here in IP config, we're all good. And that's about what you need to do to set up a pfSense router and a virtual machine in VirtualBox.